I'm really excited for the next panel. I'm going to reintroduce Brent. He's going to take the stage to moderate a discussion here about the infinite landscape of social media. So you all know that EverTrue social media is near and dear to our heart, but it continues to be an amazing landscape to be able to utilize in terms of our fundraising opportunities. So I'm going to welcome back Brent and our speakers. They're right here. There you go. Ready to go.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you.
I think you're using your mic.
Oh, good. Good. Here we go. Okay. Okay. I am really looking forward to this session, and I want to quickly introduce Rodney Robinson from Facebook and Matt Hames from Colgate. And I'll just do a really quick intro, but I first got to know Rodney as we were serving on the board of the Brown Alumni Association together. But he joined, and he had a really interesting background. He joined Facebook in 2010, 2 years prior to its IPO. Prior to that, had worked at Google and has really been on the forefront of just the digital revolution, and with two of the leading players in that space. And so we got to know each other in the context of our volunteerism at Brown, and so it was just a really valuable experience to spend time with Rodney. And he's been a part of helping many large institutions, probably not your institutions, but large, long-standing institutions, shift their sales and marketing strategy to meet their consumers where they are, which is increasingly social. And just quick show of hands so far today, how many of you have been on Facebook? How many of you have been on your alma mater's website this morning? Couple. And that shift is reflective of where your people are as well. I'm also thrilled to introduce Matt Hames, who has been one of our early partners at Colgate, and he really reflects the kind of communications professional that is frankly fighting the good fight, trying to complete the shift, trying to change the way that spending is happening, that marketing spend is happening at Colgate. And it isn't easy, but he's really been data-driven in his approach. So please join me in welcoming both of these guys. I'll start with Rodney, who works out of the Chicago office at Facebook. You joined in 2010, and just coincidentally, we've just hit two really exciting milestones. One, Facebook just crossed 2 billion users, and two, yesterday you crossed $500 billion in market cap, which means roughly every Facebook user is worth about 250 bucks. I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at here. But just would love kind of your quick view on your trajectory and really some of the shifts that you've seen from 2010 when you joined to now.
Sure, and thanks, Brent. Again, it's great to be here, and it's great to help out with EverTrue and with Raise 2017. It's funny, I think back almost 8 years ago, 2010, when Facebook was trying to still figure things out. And at the time, YouTube was relatively new, Google was running on all cylinders, but from a percent of total advertising pie at Facebook, it was tiny in 2010. Just to give you a sense of perspective, from Google, we'd work with major blue chip clients and, almost John at a $25 million contract for advertising. And when I got to Facebook in 2010, we'd be struggling to get a $250,000 or $200,000 buy. So it was definitely like early stages. But here was the main cultural shift that happened between 2010 and 2017. With our leadership with Mark Zuckerberg, we were able to invest in the business and invest in our customers, so our clients, and focus on what I might call building the pipes. Focus on the fundamental foundation of what clients need to do things well to communicate with their consumers. So our success is always defined as, are we helping our clients sell to their customer base? And so, for example, if they didn't have a mobile-enabled website or mobile-enabled Facebook website or app, it wasn't going to go over well. If they didn't have a Facebook page, it wasn't going to go over well. This is before Instagram. It was before a lot of other properties that we acquired. But we had to get the piping in place first. So from a perspective of foundation in 2010, and then secondly, a foundation of like, what do you have to do in your organization structurally to do things differently? And that's really critical, because back in that day, the advertising dollars were controlled by the PR firms within major clients. So we're talking Unilever, Kimberly-Clark, Procter & Gamble, Miller Coors. It was really the the PR divisions, communication divisions control the dollars. There's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't focused on where the brand dollars were. So from a scale perspective, where they spent a ton of money in TV and traditional media, we were kind of on the opposite side of the street in terms of where we needed to be. And so that was one of the big shifts. So it was foundation of piping, and then secondly, a shift to say we need to help the CEO or the C-level executive help her define how she needs to change her organization to activate on our platform to drive the best business success.
Great. And so Matt, you've been on that journey during that same time as a digital marketer.
Yeah.
You just heard that back in 2010, Rodney was gutting it out for $200,000 ad buys.
Yeah.
So it's 2017. Colgate is a $250 million a year institution. Where's our ad buy looking like these days at Colgate?
Yeah, so last year we spent, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's awesome. I'm learning a lot here, so thanks everyone too. Last fiscal year, we just went over spending $10,000 on Facebook advertising. The year before that, we spent little less than half of that. The year before that, we spent $50. So maybe a little bit more than $50. But the point is, we didn't really spend a lot of money.
What do you spend money on instead?
That's a good question. I think what one of the issues is, I kind of talk about this a lot. I'm 6 years into higher ed. Before I was higher ed, I was at an advertising agency, and in fact, I was responsible for turning on the Bojangles Facebook page. And I was a vegan guy living in Buffalo, New York, running Bojangles' Facebook page. I kid you not. So that was interesting. I got to higher ed, and I didn't fully understand higher ed. I still don't. I don't even pretend. But the one thing that I do know is that digital and the .edu and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever, every other digital platform connects all of our people together, and it connects our people. So whether or not a person is a prospective student, a student, or an alum, they're still the same person. And so one of the fights that I had when I got to Colgate was, let's just have one Facebook page. And I actually turned off the alumni Facebook page, and I made the argument, yes, I turned it off. I made the argument that a student who graduates Colgate becomes an alum. And then you could just advertise them as alums and not have to advertise to them and say, like my page. Because the more pages you have, the more other marketing you have to do to get them to like your page. But if you just let them graduate into it, then they like it. So. And
to be clear, Matt and I vehemently disagree on that last point. However, we have a healthy debate around it.
So here's, I'll ask you, right? Facebook is an auction. And so if I buy a Facebook ad and I'm buying one of my alums, I'm in an auction marketplace to go after my alum. If the athletics department is going after that same alum, then we're just making them richer at the cost of us, which is good for you.
Well, and certainly that's not the intention, but it's all about, I would say the bigger, the question for a lot of educational institutions would be, let's have a unified communication strategy, and let's give everybody a lane. So when Brent and I were working with Brown down in Providence, we tried to, we pushed hard to say, let's let the advancement office talk in this window of 2 weeks about this message. Let's let the alumni association talk in this window. So we're not overlapping and we're not competing in the auction to raise prices.
Yeah, I think this could be a good segue where, the reality is Colgate is spending a fraction of their overall spend on social, but they're probably spending more than most of the folks in this room. Do you know if you're spending more than $10,000 a year on Facebook at this point? Raise them high. So we've got, a couple of hands. Raise your hands high if you're spending more than $10,000 a year on direct mail or phone-a-thon programs. Raise them high. There aren't a lot of other industries left where that would be the case. in part due to a lot of what David just talked about and how consumer preferences are changing, but this has been, part of the transition that Matt's been fighting for, and we just want to show an example of some of the success that he's having at Colgate. Could we play this video?
Can I just set this up for 1 second?
Yeah.
So we have a new president. So this is in his inauguration. It's a very exciting thing for alums when you have a new president. Students are like, eh. Prospective students don't even care because he's not new, right? So it's an alumni thing, and we're standing there at Inauguration Day, and I was standing next to our video producer. He's amazing. And so the audio from this is from his inauguration, but he said this, and we both looked at each other and said, this is our stewardship video. Like, this is the video that we're going to do in June to say thank you for giving, or sort of like a last-ditch, a combination last-ditch, please give, it's the end of June, please give, and sort of like why you give, encapsulated into one. I've never heard it actually explained this way.
Now, I've only been here on this campus a few months, but even in these first few weeks, you can pick up the rhythms of this university. Mornings on this campus, the buildings and grounds employees come out first, taking care of the lawns and the trees and the buildings, driving up the hill in university-marked trucks and vans, setting things right for the day. Soon the staff and the faculty begin driving up the hill themselves, and they climb out of cars, holding cups of coffee, heading into Lathrop and Olin and Little Halls. By 9 in the morning, the campus is alive with students on paths. Faculty leave their offices and head to lecture halls and seminar rooms, and Colgate is awake. The rhythms of the day are in full force, and there's another day on the Hill, and all of us play out our parts. After a day of meetings, I'm usually in my study, up in the house, answering emails, trying to write. And at some point, the dog comes over and nudges me for a walk. Inevitably, we head down the hill into the residential quad, and then we go into the academic quadrangle. We pass by the classics library that faces into the quad from the first floor of Lawrence Hall. Peering in from the quad at night, the library room looks remarkably beautiful. And on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, a class is held there. You can imagine the beginning of that class. The students walking in, backpacks put on the floor, they're saying hello, they're sitting down. The professor is at the head of the table, taking a last glance at her notes. Maybe after the students settle in, she stands up and she pushes her chair in, a signal. And everything the founders of Colgate ever dreamed about is now in play. She takes in a breath, she looks at her students, and she starts the discussion, and thus enacts one of the most important moments in our culture. This is our best moment. We long to advance knowledge. And the more that we support that moment and enrich the steps that lead to it, and the more we gather students for whom this is the right form of education, and the more we support them, the more we honor the past 200 years, and the more we shape the next 200, every day as this university, as Colgate.
Nice. Any Colgate alums here? How'd they do? Pretty good. So Matt, what was the next step there?
So we actually wanted to run this as an ad on Facebook, and as on the Wednesday, the fiscal year ended on Friday, so we wanted to have it run Wednesday. But when you run an ad these days, you gotta give it about 48 hours
For approval.
For approval.
Up to.
If there's some experiment.
Not Rodney's ads.
No, not Rodney's ads. Not to get technical, but when you run an ad, Facebook does some experimenting on how people are going to engage with your ad in those 48 hours, approve it, and then assigns you a quality score. So you want to try to go for a 9. 9 is awesome, 1 is horrible. You don't want 1. So we put this ad out on a Monday and put $20 towards it because we didn't want anyone to see it. We just wanted it to get approved. And so then it got an 8. We were pretty excited. My goal is every single ad should have a 9. And we could talk about that in a minute. But so it had an 8, and And on Wednesday, we assigned a bunch more dollars to it, like I think 250 to 500, I forget exactly how much. We ended up spending like $1,500 on the ad. As soon as we put all that money into it, it went down to a 6, the quality score. And what happened is that our wonderful alums, thank you, shared it, and it went on the news feed of their friends who didn't go to Colgate, and so those people hid the ad. And when they hide the ad, it impacts our quality score, and our cost per click goes up, and we're just like, no, just watch it, don't share it.
But what kind of reach did you get? I mean, how many views did you see on something like that?
So, like, for something like that, it's about, we'll reach around 30,000, depending upon 30,000 alums.
Yeah.
It's not 30,000 alums, it reaches each day reset. Yeah. So each alum will see it about 3-4 times, it depends. Usually around 5 times our quality score goes down.
Yeah.
And so we're shooting for the kind of content that we think, like in advertising now, because of that quality score, you're shooting for content that is going to resonate. And if it doesn't, A, Facebook doesn't like it, but B, we shouldn't like it because we shouldn't send out content that isn't going to resonate to our alums. So
let's just say that instead, you decided we're not going to share this on Facebook. We're going to do it the old way. We'll just email them a link to a video, and hopefully they'll watch the video of the new president. How many people would have seen that?
Yeah, so we did that too, because we still do that too. It had 1,700 views last time I checked. But our video strategy for everything is we post it natively on Facebook for the spike, and then natively on YouTube for the long tail, because YouTube wins Google searches.
Yeah.
Because it's Google. So
great example. And, Rodney, I think you're operating at such a scale now. We just were talking about the presidential inauguration. Let's talk about a different presidential inauguration where you were sharing some perspective on just how aggressive the political space has been on using Facebook to reach their audience. And why don't you go from there?
Yeah, I tell you, it was interesting last fall. We all know what happened, and we know there was an A and a B in the race, right? So it was neck and neck up until the end. But what happened, what we saw from Facebook's perspective, is the way they were leveraging our platform. And when we say our platform, not just Facebook, but Instagram. We have another platform called WhatsApp, and we have Oculus and a few different platforms, but primarily Facebook and Instagram. So the Clinton campaign, certainly they were a major customer of ours, and so was the Trump campaign. But what's interesting is that they both had 2 different approaches to how they were going to focus on their end KPI, or key business objective, which was raising funds to keep the campaign engine moving. They had 2 different approaches. And you may know this, but the Hillary Clinton campaign focused on traditional ways to raise money as well as traditional ways to spend their money in different platforms to reach their key audiences in different geographies, of course. And so you might have seen the first 85% of the campaign, Hillary did a lot of TV, a lot of traditional media, including radio. And I'd say the last 15% of her campaign, she did focus on social media as a platform. The other side of the house. So for Trump, he probably spent 80% of his dollars spread out evenly, the campaign, from day one, November of 15, whenever they announced. But spread it out evenly, primarily on Facebook and Instagram, and certainly heavied up towards the last month of the election cycle. But what's interesting, beyond the fact of what I might call traditional versus new media, is how they focused on the message to their audience. So, Matt talked about that's a great message to Colgate alumni, and that definitely resonated with alumni. But what happened is that we saw that Hillary's campaign focused on roughly 1,000 different creative variations, which sounds like a lot, right? 1,000 creative variations to her different constituencies across the country, again, with the goal of raising funds for the campaign. Anyone have a guess at how many versions the Trump campaign organized to put out to their constituency? Louder. Okay, I hear 1.
Wow.
So what's interesting is that, America's pretty different. See a 4 over there. You won't believe this is a real number, and you can go Google Wired Magazine's a whole article on this. The Trump campaign created 450,000 ad variations. 450,000 ad variations. Now you might think, oh my gosh, like do we believe it? It's believable. It's easy to do on our platform, but here's the key in what they did, is that it wasn't that they had 450,000 different messages. They may have had, let's just say, I'm making this up, 30,000 different messages. But they said, we're going to A/B test everything, creative A/B test. So we're going to do a long-form ad that you may love from Colgate, but then you might see a 21-year-old or a 19-year-old, they don't spend the time in their news feed with their thumb looking at a 3-minute-long video. They have a second. So the Trump campaign may have tested a longer form ad, let's say 30 seconds, versus a 3-second ad, versus a 6-second ad. An ad with a call to action, with different call to actions. An ad with the frame around the picture without a frame. There's all these little nuances that you can do on platforms like Google and Facebook that you can test and iterate immediately and see the immediate business impact of what you've done. So to put it into numbers, I don't know about the Hillary numbers, but the Trump campaign spent $90 million on this public number on Facebook advertising. Huge kind of campaign for us. We've never seen numbers like that from a presidential election. I mean, 2008 was not like that. 2012 was not like that. But the return that the campaign generated, again, a public number, was $250 million in donations. So almost a 3x return on his initial investment. And they didn't write us one check up front. They certainly said, you know what, on day 1, November 14th, 2016, or whatever the day was, we're going to spend, I'm making this up, $100. And if we get $200 in return or $300 in return, the next day we'll spend $200. And hope we get another $600 in return. So the key there was test, iterate, and then scale. And I'd advise that to any educational institution as well. There's no reason not to test and iterate, and then if it works, scale, but have a KPI measured against that. So again, $90 million in, $250 million out. We saw what happened with the outcome of the election, whether we like it or not. But again, he definitely used the medium for what it was meant to be, which was a scalable platform to test different messages to get a different effect and impact out of their different audiences.
So Matt, you have doubled the Facebook ad spend in part by taking Rodney's approach, which is testing, iterating, and scaling. But we're still talking about a fraction of the spend that we would see out of the commercial world. Do you think there is a day coming when Colgate's spending $1 million a year on Facebook?
Probably not $1 million a year, but I think it's a question of scale. The people who raise their hands who are spending more than $10,000 a year on Facebook advertising, think about how many people are doing that in comparison to how many people resources we put to a phone-a-thon or we put to a direct mail piece or an alumni magazine. I think one of the things that I do at Colgate when new people start is I make them go to lynda.com, and watch the Facebook Power Editor module. You guys get lynda.com for 30 days for free. Watch the Power Editor module. It will explain to you what an ad set is, a campaign. It will explain to you what Power Editor is, if you're hearing that word for the first time. And it allows you to do A/B testing really easily. It allows you to duplicate ads. It allows you to do some amazing things. We A/B tested donate button, no donate button. No donate button wins. So now, almost across the board, there's never an absolute rule, but almost across the board, when we do an Ask Facebook ad, there's no donate button, because it's like one of those old direct marketing kind of things where if you sign it in blue, you get more people to respond. I don't know why. I think like the word donate now inside people's heads, they're just like, okay, I'm going to click on this. Oh, it's a giving page. There must be some sort of behavior I don't understand, but no donate button gets more clicks.
I mean, look, a lot of what we've been, I think the political space is different. It's faster moving. There's more urgency, deadlines. We heard a little bit about that this morning. But a big part of it isn't necessarily the quick hit, but also how do we build that long-term engagement and loyalty, and per what we've heard from Josh and some of the other panelists today, how do you really start understanding consumer interest? So it's not just about the quick hit tomorrow or today, but it's about the 50-year donor life cycle. And Rodney, you've got a lot of experience with some brands that, like these institutions, have been around for a long time. In some cases are very decentralized, but have been making the shift. And you were sharing a bit about Hyatt, which has massive scale. And if we think it's hard to change in higher ed, it's not like it's super easy for Hyatt to change either. Why don't you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so we had a great, again, it starts with the leader at the top and his or her vision. So we had the chief marketing officer of Hyatt, a gentleman from England, had heard legends of Facebook hacks. And so maybe if you watch the movie The Social Network, which is not a 100% accurate movie, but the attitude was accurate. Remember, you'd see the coders around the computers drinking beer, all working all night and building the product, shipping the product. So he came to us and said, we want to do a hack with Facebook. And the reason we want to do a hack is that, Hyatt's doing well right now. We have Grand Hyatt, we have Hyatt Residences, we have Andaz, we have different brands of Hyatt. But obviously Starwood with Westin and with the W, they're a key competitor. And so they said, you know what, we've seen or heard rumblings that Starwood Hotel Group are being more innovative in the digital space. We want to make sure that we stay at par and certainly better than our competition. So his first ask was us, can we do a hack? And so we went to the presidential suite at the Grand Hyatt in Chicago. And it was cool because Obama had stayed there for his inaugural speech in Grant Park. So we had about 20 of us, so Facebook folks and Hyatt brand folks, in a great little spread in the top of the Grand Hyatt in Chicago, thinking about how we can help that company innovate and do things differently. But here's the permission that was granted, is that the CMO gave his team, and he spent his time there with the sleeves rolled up as well, the autonomy and ability to do something and to come out with action. And so we said, okay, we've got 7 major brands for Hyatt, as I mentioned a few of them. Now let's pick one of the brands, so we picked Andaz Hotels, and let's just change the model. He gave us a sense of what they're doing with Andaz right now. So there's no front desk. They have the iPads walking around the lobby if you stay in the Andaz. But he also said we want to make sure that we make this socially engineered when you walk in. So if people were to log in when they register for the Andaz with their Facebook ID, you'd also get a sense of what their interests are. So they like the Red Sox. They enjoy kayaking. And so when they go to the concierge, instead of the first question is, oh, what's there to do in Chicago? They might say, oh, Mr. Robinson, we see that you love kayaking. There's a free kayaking Groupon tour that's leaving tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So help us be smarter based on social interaction, social engagement, and likes and interests of what they do a majority of their day on their mobile phones, and let's use that to help strengthen our relationship with our guests at the Andaz Hotel. So long story short is that...
So should the reunion registration desk have that option?
Portable iPad people.
Yeah.
Just walk the room
and
log in with Facebook. There's no reason not to say that we know that you love XYZ artists. You should know there's an alumni group happening later in the reunion weekend on people who love this special artist. There's so much knowledge and intelligence in what we do from a behavioral perspective every single day on platforms like Facebook and Instagram that there's no reason not to use it to further those connections and those relationships. So it's been great. I mean, it's worked well for Andaz. They're scaling it across the other properties right now.
So there's a fine line of that kind of like we know that you know kind of thing. Like we'll do a post about career development on Facebook and then use the EverTrue platform to download all those people and then write a separate script for the phone-a-thon and have it talk about career development highlighting career development. We know that we know that they liked that on Facebook. We don't say they like that on Facebook.
Yeah.
But,
ask for permission. I would just say, you log in and say, do you allow Hyatt Hotels to understand more about you, and click the blue button, accept, or you don't. And roughly half the people won't, but half the people will.
It's an interesting step.
Those might be higher value guests.
Yeah, we definitely have in our plans this year to start asking nicely for some of our young alums, on some of their on some of the things that they care about right now, and saying Colgate does that as well, like social justice issues, that we can advertise to a Colgate alum who's 21 to 25 and interested in LGBTQ issues, and talk to them about what we're doing at Colgate for that. So we can be much more specific in our ad buy. If I could wave a magic wand, I think I'd do 1,000 Facebook ads a year. And right now we're at like 160. The vast majority of those happening in December and June. So like the wand would be that the people inside of the institution all learned how to do it, and it didn't become just my job, it became everybody's job to think about how we can use this platform.
Look, if I had a magic wand, I'd do the same thing. We don't have one, we have the conference, and I think we're making good strides in that regard. And on that note, I want to just show one example of really how easy this can be. I was thinking about this, given that Rodney and I spent a lot of time trying to help the folks at Brown understand how ad spend can shift. Outside of work, I'm still involved a little bit, even locally here with the Brown Club of Boston. And so yesterday at lunchtime, which is about 24 hours ago, I decided to run a little test. At the end of the summer, Brown has an upcoming event at Tia's here in Boston in the waterfront. It's an end of summer celebration. They started marketing this event a while ago, or at least it's been out for a couple weeks. And what did they do? They sent an email. They sent an email and a few people registered. But yesterday, I created a post in the Brown Alumni Association. I took the link from that event, which is being ticketed by Eventbrite, and there's a great integration between Eventbrite and Facebook we'll talk more about tomorrow. I spent $25, and I created an ad that only had two categories. One, people who went to Brown University, and two, folks that live within 25 miles of Boston. Since lunchtime yesterday, it took me about 20 to 30 seconds to do that. Over 100 people have RSVP'd for our end of summer event. And these are friends that just hadn't responded to the traditional way of doing it, and it costs nothing. But the challenge at Brown and at many institutions right now is that when I go to your alumni websites, I see a long list of upcoming events. Mm-hmm. And then when I go to your Facebook pages, I don't see anything. And there's so much work going into planning those events, calling TIAs, registering, getting your volunteer leaders engaged, and so little investment happening. 25 seconds, $25, 100 people have already suggested that they're interested in that event. And Brown's got a whole lot more events that should be getting that kind of attention. And this is certainly something I noticed with Colgate, where right now, if you go to Colgate's Facebook page, there's no upcoming events. And I think this is a litmus test for a lot of you. Just type your own schools, either your school page or your alumni page, into Facebook. And even if you don't do the ad dollars, even $25, there should be a listing. How many of you have RSVP'd to something via Facebook, or said you're interested, or seen that your friends are going to events? And what we are seeing, though, are more and more schools embracing this. One example that I'll dive into a bit more tomorrow is Boston University, but this is what their upcoming alumni event look like on their Facebook page. And I really believe that given that there are now 2 billion people, including most of yours, on Facebook, this is pretty much what your page should look like as well. And then we should start testing and iterating and see if you can drive some attendance to these events, and then going forward, not just drive attendance, but understand who those people are in your systems. Which of those people are assigned to gift officers? What are they engaging with? Which of those folks have wealth ratings? There's so much more that we can do that may just start with a simple little signal on Facebook. And so I'll just,
Can I add? I mean, so how many folks in the audience have done custom audiences? And I'll explain what it is if we don't get a lot of hands. So maybe 15% of the room raise their hand. For those who don't know what it is, it's simply matching your school database with our Facebook user database. So Facebook, obviously our claim to fame is real people. So we know that it's Brent, Grinna, and Rodney Robinson. So we know people are who they say they are on Facebook. So just to give you a couple just quick stats is that when we do a match of an email list, which if we had at least 1,000 emails, that's it, for free. Any admin of the page can upload that email spreadsheet and within seconds get the match rate. So to give you the math is that roughly 70 to 80% of the match of the list tends to match because people tend to use their real email addresses as well and not like a Hotmail email address for spam or something like that. So we get a good match rate. But then, so what to do with that? And Brent is being smart as always to say, okay, we did it for Boston yesterday, but we also did it for Brown basketball 2 or 3 years ago.
That's
right. We took the list of alumni in Chicago who were interested in the basketball team or had some connection. We matched that with Facebook. We set up the same Facebook event for the Brown Bears versus Northwestern and got great return, great attendance, and it was a success. And the key is to institutionalize that and scale it and to do more of it. So, you're going to have some wins, a couple failures, and that's okay. But the ones that work well for $25, or I think we spent $40 in Chicago, it's easy to just iterate, scale, and move on. So we know that we're in a world of limited resources. And endowment returns aren't what they used to be. And we have a lot of people doing a lot of different jobs. But again, 25 seconds to do $25 to get the return for Boston at TIA's. So there's so much to do. And I think the biggest kind of like mindset change that needs to happen is just saying, give the ability to do that. Give the summer intern $200 and see what she can do. And I bet you she can do more than what we've done the past 6 months, let's say.
Yeah. Okay, I want to save time for a couple of questions here. Any questions?
Over here.
Hi, this question's primarily for Rodney. I think I read a few days ago that Facebook has sort of strategically reoriented their focus towards groups, private groups within the actual platform. So I'm just wondering if you can comment a little bit on that. And to the extent that many of all of the platforms we've been talking about involve pages as opposed to private groups or groups within Facebook, what do you think the implications of that should be for us going forward?
Yeah, appreciate the question. It's Sam, right? Yes. Appreciate the question. Sam from Tufts. So we did change our company mission on June 22nd of this summer from make the world more open and connected to give people the power to build communities and bring the world closer together. So with all the chaos going on in the world right now, the second line is pretty easy, but the first line is what you're asking about is the power of communities. And so we're not where we need to be today, but we know that that's where we need to go, because whether it's your prep school, whether it's your college, whether it's your football team, whatever it might be, there's always going to be affinities. And we're all in the business of affinities, right? Connecting with our constituents and getting them to help support the school in different ways. So versus pages, I guess the difference will be is that affinities will be a bit more private and will be a bit more kind of probably personal. Then a page will be, in my opinion, more corporate and just more like this is what our brand stands for, and the group will be very specific. We'd love to see a world where like there's one alumni site, one school site with the major communications, and then specific Brown football groups, Brown wrestling groups, so on and so forth, because that's where we see a lot of the interactions happening. You'll see a lot of the tools will cross-pollinate between the two, so I wouldn't worry about that. But yeah, we certainly are making a pitch for the next 10 years of the company. We've been around for 10 years to focus on personalized groups.
Yes.
Just a follow-on question to that. John Torgett from Virginia Tech. Would you consider, with that mission change, from a nonprofit higher education perspective, Microsoft, Google, and Facebook trying to do that together? A lot of us have LinkedIn private groups already, and it would be wonderful to see what Matt was saying in terms of our internal barriers between working with Google,
sure.
LinkedIn, Microsoft, and Facebook. So just sort of a question about if you guys have thought about the application to higher education at all in this.
Yeah, the short answer is no, but the bigger answer is I think like EverTrue's got a great platform to help coordinate and talk to all those APIs together and put it in one spot.
Other questions? Yes.
Oh.
Your differences about one page versus multiple.
groups.
Yeah, so the question was why I disagree with Matt on sort of one page versus many pages, and I think just on my personal experience, Brown is a big place, and I think for Brown to have one message, and even if they're really effectively creating different segments, I think there's enough unique content, like the Brown U football page. There's a guy now that will be in the locker room after the game when the water's being dumped on the coach's head, jumping up and down. And I don't think it's realistic for Brown's central communications team to be there in that locker room all the time, whereas the football operations person is. And I think that there are so many examples around campus where even when you think about the president, him or herself, when you think about faculty members, I think we're getting to a point where the faculty members of tomorrow will have their own presences, which could be linked to the institutions, but that engagement could be just as relevant from a fundraising perspective going forward. But again, it's a question of resources, and
I think it's a question of resources, but I think we're also we're ill-defined by purpose. That story that you're talking about is really awesome for the people who are already friends of Brown football. But it's a great prospective student message, and it's being lost. If it was on the main Facebook page in and around January 15th, or November 15th, which is Colgate's ED, like that'd be a great thing to go on Colgate's Facebook page on November 14th, the day before ED apps are due. Whereas that beautiful marketing message and that beautiful story is being lost in its own little silo pocket. So
we're an important siloed pocket. All right, the debate will continue. Thank you, Rodney and Matt and all of you.